Hi, I'm Claudia St. I'm the president of Affinity HR Group. We are your HR partner and resource. Today, I want to talk to you about pot, marijuana. It is such a pain in the neck for many of our business clients because, as you know, states are rapidly changing laws, enacting laws to make either medical marijuana use or recreational marijuana use the law of the land. The problem is, it isn't the law of the land because the federal government still prohibits marijuana as a class 1 drug. So there's this kind of weird limbo going on in between the federal level and the state level. So I wanted just to fill you in on what you might want to be thinking about and what we're recommending to our clients. First of all, if you are an employer that is under a contract that requires a drug-free workplace or are regulated by the Department of Transportation for safety and security reasons, typically, depending on the state law, typically the federal law supersedes that. So the state laws would not apply to you. What I know about every single state is that no state requires or allows that employees show up high at work. There is no requirement that you tolerate marijuana consumption on the job. So those are the two things that you should know. Now we get into the murky area. So for both medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, there are varying laws and interpretations on what the appropriate approach should be for testing for marijuana use in your pre-employment drug panel. I want you to consider it carefully. If you are in a state that has recreational and medical marijuana, there really is no point in testing for it because it's legal and you don't know, because the testing is not accurate enough to know when the consumption occurred or whether the employee is currently under the influence by doing a test, because the consumption could have been on Saturday and the test could be on Tuesday, and there just is no test accurate enough right now to determine that. We recommend you seriously consider continuing to use marijuana as part of your drug panel. I also want you to consider it because of this. In states where it is recreational, to preclude people who are participating in a legally approved act, to prohibit them from your employment is kind of crazy given how hard it is in this day and age to find good talent, to find young talent. And so why create another barrier for yourself if they're doing something legal while at home and while not at work? So there is an element of get over it and be careful. Also, to test for marijuana use where it is legal, you can run afoul of an employee's privacy if they are using marijuana for legally approved medicinal reasons. You're testing them and then not hiring them can be a violation of their rights. So it's not just a practical challenge to be testing in pre-employment when it's so hard to find talent, but it also could be a legally precarious place for you to be. Our recommendation is a simple one. For states that have medical marijuana, treat it like you would somebody who's been prescribed a controlled substance. When can they use it? Does it impair their function? Do you need to alternate their job duties? Things of that sort, and to get the appropriate documentation from their medical provider. In recreational states, I recommend you treat it just like drinking alcohol. People are allowed to drink. They can get wickedly drunk in their own time, but they're not allowed to be under the influence when they're on the job working for you. Treat it the same way. What we recommend our clients do is to develop a good, solid policy for the rules of the road on how you're going to be dealing and treating marijuana at work. Of course, specifying that they may not be high at work. Develop that policy. We recommend that before you do anything, before you develop a policy or before you even take any adverse action about an employee, or if you're going to continue with marijuana on your drug panel, run it by a lawyer, get some legal advice on that, because the problem is every single one of these states is different. They all have different requirements. So develop a solid policy. Train your managers on how to comply with the policy. Inform your employees on what the policy is so that they understand what they can do. There also is an appropriate use of training your supervisors and managers for recognizing the symptoms of being under the influence, and in certain states it is allowed to perform an impairment assessment, kind of like they do if you get pulled over while drinking and they make you walk the line and touch your nose or whatever it is that they do that doesn't require a breathalyzer test, the visual inspection at the scene. And then notifying employees of what the repercussions are for violating your policy. So again, a lot of this stuff is convoluted because it's a state-by-state basis. We do recommend that you review your approach to marijuana with legal counsel, or you can contact us and we can see if we can help you with that. But if you're in one of these states, you cannot just put your head in the sand and wish it away. You need to develop a policy, you need to communicate that policy, and you need to employ that policy. So I hope that's helpful. It's always fun when crazy things like this take place, and it's very vexing for our clients. But you're not alone if that makes you feel any better. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope that you have a safe and productive work week. Take care.